So what is the value of meditation? For quite a while we would envision people meditating as those people who would completely withdraw from the world, perhaps live in a cave in the Himalayas and never create anything of value, or at least that we would measure with our own usual material viewpoint. But increasingly we are recognizing that taking the time to go into quiet states of our own awareness actually generates more creativity and more success and more joy in life. So what is the value of meditation? Well, it's really twofold. One is its value in its own right. It has no intention other than its own experience. Throughout our days, almost everything that we do because we anticipate a specific outcome. We go to work to earn money, well usually, or to provide a service. Almost everything we do is to achieve a desired outcome. The value of meditation is absolutely that it's for its own self. It's a way of going beyond the body, going beyond the mind, going beyond the emotions and contacting that field of conscious awareness, the spirit, that is self-sufficient in its own right. And the value of that is that it reconnects us with that aspect of ourselves, which is our true nature. Most of us are continuously identifying ourselves with situations, circumstances, objects in our environment. If someone asks the question, who are you? People usually say, I'm a mother, I'm a father, I'm a lawyer or a doctor, or I'm a director, I'm a businessman, or I drive a certain car. We define ourselves in terms of possessions or positions in our lives, and from an Ayurvedic perspective that is a sure formula for suffering, because anything that we can identify ourselves with outside of our true self is by definition a time-space event, as in it has a location in space and has a duration in time. If we can perceive it with our own senses, be it a galaxy, a star, a flower, a relationship, even a bank account or a human body, it will be in this realm of time and space, meaning that it has a beginning, a middle and an end. That's why everything in this universe can be described in terms of a wave. So if all we know in our lives are situations, circumstances and people and things that are time-space events, then at some deep level of our awareness we will always be living in fear, because we know that we are going to lose it at some point. You can have an absolutely fabulous marriage and then in some way or another it's going to be lost. Either it will end in divorce or one or the other of the spouses dying. You can be a senior manager, a director or even a CEO, but at some time or another it's going to come to an end. So this object referral in Ayurveda understanding is the basis of all suffering, and the only solution is self-referral, which means getting intimately in contact with that aspect of our own nature which is beyond time and beyond space. And the most effective and direct way of accomplishing that is through meditation. And what happens in the process of meditation? Well, the mind is a thought generating machine. In fact, it has been suggested the mind is only the thoughts that occupy it. If you take away the thoughts, you take away the mind. The mind is continuously generating thoughts, one thought after another. What am I going to say next? I hope I don't forget what I'm going to say next. When is this going to finish? Constant generation of thoughts. So how do we get beyond the thoughts? Well, we can only get beyond the thoughts by going through the spaces between the thoughts. In between each thought is a gap. We dive into that gap, we access the next impulse that comes out as a thought. Go back into that gap, access the next impulse, and that comes out as a thought. So meditation techniques are all designed to do the same thing. That's to allow us to slip into the silent spaces between the thoughts. And that can happen by allowing ourselves to put our attention on some object that doesn't contain meaning. Meaning is what connects us to the next thought. One thought has meaning and a sound quality. The next thought has meaning and a sound quality. Every thought and every word has both a vibration and an attachment of a meaning to that vibration. We can interrupt that internal cycle of thought leading to thought by finding some object of attention that allows us to temporarily disconnect the meaning that keeps us in this association. In Ayurveda, sound is the subtlest experience. Sound is that vibration that stirs the silence, and so using sound to transcend, to go beyond thinking, is said to be the most effective and most direct way to experience that deeper level of awareness. Mentor and mediator studies show With just a simple repetition of a vibration, a simple mantra like Om or Ram or Lam, you can see dramatic changes in physiological function. Oxygen consumption dropped by 15-20%, which is deeper than when people go into a deep sleep, or people who practice hypnotherapy. They found that the breathing rate slowed substantially, often down to 6 or 7 breaths per minute. The chemistry of the blood changed, lactic acid, which is a measurement of a stress response, usually reflecting lack of oxygen, fell substantially. And skin resistance, which is another measurement of relaxation, rose substantially. So these various measurements on the physiology of meditation are really quite unique. Then there was information coming in on EEG patterns of people who were meditating. It was noticed that after people started meditating, they would generate continuous streams of alpha cycles of brain activity between 8 to 12 cycles per second. And then it was shown that after a little while, people would go into a period of theta rhythm. Theta is usually associated with drowsiness, but when people usually go through this state, it is very brief, like a minute or so before moving into a deeper stages of sleep. But people meditating were staying in this theta state for 15, 20 or even 30 minutes at a time, just hovering on the borderline between wakefulness and sleeping state, and accessing those dreamlike images that normally we only experience right before we wake up, or right as we're falling asleep. This is what led to the description of the meditative state as a state of restful alertness. Restful because the body is at a deeper level of relaxation than what we would see during sleep, but alert because the brain is functioning in a different pattern. Then people became very interested in looking at what are the relationships of brainwaves from one part of the brain to another. So people were measuring brainwave activity around the skull and found some interesting correlations that the further someone got into the meditation practice, the more there was the measurement of coherence. So the left side of the brain and the right side of the brain began to line up in a very rhythmic pattern. Normally there is a lot of disjunction, but during meditation there seemed like there was synchrony coherence that was generated during meditation. Then as the meditation progressed, there was actually increased coherence between the back part of the brain and the front part of the brain, and patterns that had not been seen before. What's so interesting is that if you read the Vedic literature, this is exactly the description of the fourth stage of consciousness known as Samadhi that we touched on earlier in this course. So it has a number of benefits. It most importantly gets us in touch with a deeper aspect of ourselves, beyond space and beyond time. It allows us to quiet our mind in many ways, to reset our system. We talked earlier about our fight or flight response. We have this built-in activation response, but we also have this built-in relaxation response, this built-in restful alertness response, so that after we have extended energy, we can very naturally bring our attention back to the center point, rejuvenate the system, and allow us once again to get in touch with our creativity. It's from this perspective of silence that we are actually the most successful. You may have noticed when you get overwhelmed or in a panic and can't think what to do or say, the only way to overcome the situation is to allow our mind to quieten down, and only then will the way forward come to us from this state of relaxation. Our minds work best from this platform of quietness, and meditation is one of the most profound ways to achieve this state, and simultaneously creates this quietness in the body. Meditation is not complicated, and it's really useful to learn a mantra meditation technique because it brings the signal of attention to the most internal subtle level that we can. We can do it easily through other techniques. So let's go through a breathing awareness technique. So when you're sitting comfortably, get in the habit of sitting with your back supported and your feet on the ground, your hands in some comfortable position, but not with your head supported, as we can very easily quickly pass through the junction point of restful alertness and just fall asleep when we have our head rested. So now let's just close our eyes, and I would like you to notice that just by closing our eyes and bringing our attention inwards, doing nothing else, we feel some calmness, some relaxation. Automatically the brain starts to quieten down. The activity starts with the visual part of the brain to begin with, and notice that in the quietness thoughts spontaneously arise in your awareness. You don't have to do anything to have a thought. It's the most effortless thing we can do. You can't force your mind to stop having thoughts, because the field of pure potentiality is the place of least effort. You can't use effort to get there. You can only let the thoughts come and go. Bring your attention back to the mantra or to your breath, and let the thoughts drift away. Thoughts are just a release of that stressful activity. Now in the quietness, very gently shift your attention to your breath. Just a slight shift of attention, and simply observe your breathing. Observe your inhalations and your exhalations. Your inhalations and your exhalations. Aren't you glad you don't have to deal with regulating your breath all the time? As you observe your breath, it may change. It may get slower and deeper. It may get faster or shallower. And sometimes it may even seem to pause for a time. Whatever happens, just simply and innocently observe it. Don't try to alter it in any way. Don't resist any changes. Simply witness it. Observe it. And you will find that at times your attention will drift away from your breath. You will have some thoughts in your mind or sensations in your body, or some sound in the environment. Whenever you realize that your attention has drifted off, very effortlessly, very gently, very innocently, bring your attention back to your breath.
बनकर आने वाले को ज़माने भर की रात दे मुझे तड़पाने वाले को, मेरी मैयत पे कर आने वाले को डाल दो अपने आंचल का टुकड़ा, दे मुझे तड़पाने वाले को, मुझे करार भी था नया चल का टुकड़ा।
So now, bring your breathing back to normal. If you're still focused on your breath, well done. But you can do this with or without music, with or without a mantra. There are many ways and many options you can choose that best suits you. And this concludes this video, and in the next video I'll take you through a guided meditation.